Well, hey there, and welcome to the Bridge Online. It's so great to have you with us today. My name is Chris.
And I'm Lisa. And today we are wrapping up our series called A Way Out, talking all about temptation. If you've missed any week in this series, I highly encourage you to go to our website and click the OnDemand button to find them.
Absolutely. Well, as part of our message today, we are actually going to be taking part in communion. So while you're listening to the first song, be sure to grab some crackers and some juice or whatever you have on hand and be ready. If you're new to church and don't know what communion is, there's no worries. Feel free to just watch along.
And speaking of song, this one is one of my favorites. It's called Hands Toward Heaven, and it says this: "To the King Almighty, to the one who saves, be glory and honor for all our days. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise." May that be our prayer this morning. Go grab your crackers and juice, and we will head over to the band.
Yours is a name high above any other. Yours is the kingdom forever you reign. And yours is the power that lifted us out of the grave. Yours is the heart that is beating inside us. Yours is the glory and all of the fame. And yours is the love that you poured down us. We're rising up to sing your praise. To the King Almighty, to the one who saves, be glory and honor for all our days. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise. Yours is the whole earth and everything in it. Yours are the stars that you spoke into grace. And yours are the shouts of your sons and daughters. We're lifting up your holy name. To the King Almighty, to the one who saves, be glory and honor for all our days. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise. For unending mercy, for amazing grace, for life everlasting, for sins erased. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise. Rescued, redeemed, we're alive, we're forgiven, shouting our praise with our hands toward heaven. Rescued, redeemed, we're alive, we're forgiven, shouting our praise with our hands toward heaven. Rescued, redeemed, we're alive, we're forgiven, shouting our praise with our hands toward heaven. To the King Almighty, to the one who saves, be glory and honor for all our days. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise. For unending mercy, for amazing grace, for life everlasting, for sins erased. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise. With our hands toward heaven and our voices raised, to the King Almighty we give all our praise.
What a beautiful song. Well, I am really excited about the Christmas plans that we have. The last few weeks we have been highlighting their plans for the drive-through Christmas experience. However, as most of you have seen through Scott's email or the loop this past week, we are making changes. In fact, we are making a pivot in regards to our Christmas plans. Please stay tuned as we roll out all the details next week. And if you don't get the loop, make sure you go to our website and scroll down to the bottom of the screen and sign up so you never miss a thing.
Well, speaking of Christmas, it is beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Our set is decorated, Christmas music is playing in the stores, and Starbucks, they have their holiday cups out. I'm really starting to get in the Christmas spirit. I love Christmas so much, but I think my favorite part is just being able to spend time with friends and family. I know it's going to look a little different this year, but even getting the chance to slow down and spend some time with loved ones, either in person or in Zoom, will be great. What's your favorite part about Christmas?
Well, I love Christmas. I love everything about it, and obviously family's a big part of it.
Oh, yeah.
But if I had to choose something else, I think one of the things would be the Christmas lights. I just love going and seeing the Christmas lights. I've got two little girls, and they are really loving the Christmas lights this year, and it's great to be able to take them, see them enjoy it, and really watch things through their eyes.
Oh, that's a great part of Christmas. I can't wait for Scott and I to take Parker to see the lights. Well, if you can believe it, next week is our kickoff for the Christmas series. Jeremy and Scott will be talking about some of their favorite Christmas things. But before we get back to the band, I want to stop and thank all of those who support the mission and the vision of the Bridge. Week after week, you give so generously that we can continue to build bridges to our community. Thank you. I know God will do amazing things this Christmas season, and you are a part of that. If you haven't before but are interested in giving financially, we have 4 ways that you can give. First, you can mail a check to the church. Second, you can go to our website and hit the Give button. Third, you can use our Church Center app. And lastly, you can text the amount you wish to give to 84321. Thank you to all who give.
Yes, thank you. Let's go back to the band for the song called Faithful God. The song speaks about our persistence in the middle of whatever we are going through because He is faithful.
I am surrounded on every side, can't see the light of day, but I am persuaded beyond all hope you won't let go of me. I stake my claim on every word you say, you will not be late. I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over. Even against all odds, you are a faithful God. You're faithful God. Darkest of weather, though I can't see, I still believe you're good. So I'm moving forward through crashing waves. I know I'm safe with you. You hold my life, you hear my cry with every breath inside. I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust you with my life. I know my story, it isn't over. Even against all odds, oh, you are a faithful God. That's who you are. That your promises will hold together, and I will dwell in your hope of your love forever. I am convinced that your promises will hold together, and I will dwell in your love, and I will sing through fire and thunder, 'cause you are on my side. I trust
Almost 2 months ago, I sat in this very chair and began studying for this series that we've been in for the last number of weeks called A Way Out. And so I thought it only fitting that we conclude this series where it actually began. And today I want to talk to a group of people out there who are like me. You're competitive. As long as I can remember, I've always wanted to win. In fact, I've had to win. It didn't matter what it was. I mean, my mom even says she won't play games with me because I'm so competitive and I just have to win. It doesn't matter to me if it's marbles or Monopoly. It didn't matter growing up if it was baseball or basketball that I played through high school and in college. It didn't matter what it was. Whatever I played, I just had to win. And I know that there's so many of you out there that are like me. In fact, there's probably a lot of your kids that are like me. The snow is on the ground and they play the game that I love to play in elementary school, King of the Hill. I think they still play that. But I can remember when the recess bell would ring and we'd all run out into the playground and you had to get to the top of the hill. And whoever got in your way, you had to push them out of the way. And once you got on the top of the hill, you had to stay there. You had to keep pushing people off and keeping people down. And I loved that game. I had to win. I didn't care who got in my way. And if they were friends or not, everybody was going down. That's just the way that I'm wired. And I know that there are so many people like me that way. I mean, you're competitive. You're addicted to progress. You're addicted to forward motion. I mean, you just love, like you're just driven. You're addicted to moving the ball down the field. You wake up every morning looking at how far you've come and how far you have to go to the goals that you want to experience in your life. I mean, there's just something in you. You're just wired that way. You can't really explain it. It's just in you, You're entrepreneurial maybe. Maybe you're into sales and maybe you've got your own business, right? And you're all about thinking about how I can move the business to the next level and what's the next piece of the puzzle to get from here to there. Or maybe you're in sales and you don't really care what company you work for. You don't care what they sell because to you it's not about the product. It's not even about being a salesman. It's just about the game. It's about the competition and you love it, right? You maybe sit down at the table with your family and they're all talking, having a good time, and you're somewhere else in your mind thinking about something you saw that day or something you heard or another deal that's on the table, and you're just always about what do I do to get to the next level, and you're just wired that way. Or maybe you're addicted to progress and you're all about the future, but it's not for your sake. You think about it through the lens of other people. And you're always worrying, what about this and what about that and how am I going to do this? And it's not for your sake. Maybe it's for your kids. And you've got all these plans and all these goals for your kids and you're constantly pushing them and you tell yourself that it's for their benefit when in reality you're kind of maybe living vicariously through your kids and you just have all these plans and you got it all mapped out and how they're going to go from this to that and you're constantly pushing them like, leave me alone. Right? Or maybe you have goals and plans for your spouse. That's always a fun one, right? I mean, you don't understand why your husband is so content and everybody in his company is passing him by and he just seems content to live life and enjoy life, but you can't enjoy life because he's enjoying it too much. I don't know if that connects with anybody, but the idea is you're just all about the future. You're all about progress. You're just wired to move from one thing to the next. You're not content with the status quo. You're not content with the way things are. You're always believing, always dreaming, always wanting to accomplish more. And I want you to know, as we're talking this morning, as we're kind of launching in, I don't want you to tune out. I don't want you to like, oh no, is this a sin? Is this like a bad thing? I want you to know that that thing in you is actually the image of God in you. That once upon a time, there was nothing. And God said, I'm tired of nothing. I want something. And so he created the whole universe. I mean, talk about progress, right? There was nothing. And 6 days later, there was everything. See, God is not only a creative God, but he's also a God of progress. And as you read through the Bible, as you look at history, it's a story that's always moving forward. It's always a progression. So that thing in you as a high school student or a college student is always like, you got your 10-year plan and everybody that's older than you, when they talk to you and you lay out your 10-year plan, they're like, wow, like they're amazed that someone your age, as young as you are, has such a plan and such a handle on what you want to do and see and accomplish in your life. Or that thing in you as a mom who has all these things mapped out and planned out for your kids. Or that thing in you as a business owner who is just like always thinking about what's next and how I can move this to get that and move from here to get to there. That's the image of God in you. And all of us have it to some degree, but there's some of us that are more wired that way than others. And for those of us like that, those of us who are goal setters, those of us who want to be trend setters, it sets us up for a very subtle and specific temptation. A subtle and specific temptation. And the reason that we're so set up, the reason that we're so susceptible to this temptation is because we can be so focused on forward motion, like we can be so consumed with what's next. We can be so, consumed and driven by accomplishment and moving from this to that and getting this piece of the puzzle to complete that and going from here and getting to there. I mean, we can be so consumed and driven by those things that we actually lose sight of what we're willing to do in order to get it. We can lose sight of what we're willing to do in order to accomplish it, in order to experience it. And so it sets us up for this very subtle, specific temptation of taking shortcuts. It sets us up to do the right thing or to get the right thing or accomplish the right thing, but in the wrong way and at the wrong time. And see, the moment's going to come in your life, and maybe for you it already has, and my guess is for some of us that are more driven, it's going to come more than once in our life. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, can't tell the future, but I can kind of tell you, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen to you. It's happened to me, and I know that it will again. The time is going to come in your life where you're going to have the opportunity to take a giant step forward towards whatever it is you're going after, whatever that is for you. You're going to have the opportunity to take a step forward, maybe a giant step forward, and many times for many people, it's going to happen more than once. But in order to take that step forward, in order to get that, step closer to whatever it is you're wanting to experience or accomplish in your life, you're going to be tempted to take that step. You're going to be tempted to give up or to sacrifice or to compromise something that you value. That in order to get ahead, in order to get the deal, in order to close the deal, in order to open whatever it is you're trying to open or build whatever it is you're trying to build, you're going to be tempted to violate or to give up or to sacrifice something you value. That in order to do that thing that you were educated to do, maybe you feel like you were gifted to do, you have the talents for, maybe the things that you went to school for, you're educated for, all of your experiences led you here. In order to get that next thing that seems like the next logical step for you, you're going to be tempted to violate or to sacrifice what you value. Maybe it's your morality, maybe it's your ethics, maybe it's, the values that you were raised with or the values that you want to, share with your kids. Maybe for you, if you're a Christian, it might be, you might have to compromise what the scriptures teach or what you know that God would have you do, or in some cases not do. But in order to get ahead, in order to take that next step forward, you're going to have to sacrifice what you value. And here's the trick. It's not forever. It's just temporarily. Right? In order to get ahead, in order to close the deal or get this done or to get into that relationship, in order to get that, scholarship, in order to do whatever it is that's next for you, you're going to have to kind of walk through or run through that wall of fire. And the temptation is just to do it temporarily, that I have to temporarily turn my eyes off my beliefs. I have to temporarily put aside my values, temporarily put aside my ethics and my morality and everything that I believe, my conscience, my convictions. And I'm not going to do it forever, but in order to get this deal done, in order to take this next step, in order to get where I'm trying to go, I don't have to do it forever, but I've just got to set it aside for this moment. And then when I get where I'm trying to go, when I accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, when the deal gets done, when I get there, then I'll readapt or readopt my values. I'll readopt my convictions. I'll readopt my morals or my faith. That I've just got to, in the world that I live in the industry that I work in, with the people that I work with, in my world, this is just how it goes. I have to play by their rules. And I'll do this just for the moment, and I'll set aside what I value for just a moment, just temporarily. And then when I get on the other side, when I accomplish this, when I get that, when I get there, then everything will go back to normal. And we tell ourselves when we get on the other side that not only will it go back to normal, but I'll actually have more opportunity. Maybe you'll be your own boss, or maybe you'll have more margin. Maybe you'll have more time. You'll have more money. You'll be able to give more money. You'll have more opportunity to be at home or to serve more. And so we tell ourselves that the means justify, right? It's justified to get to the end, to get where I need to go. This is just what I've got to do. And it's not forever. It's just temporary. And then when I get there, everything will go back to normal. In fact, everything may be better. I may actually accomplish what I set out to do, what's been in me to do, what I've prayed that I want to do, what I actually maybe even believe that God has called me to do. Every single one of us is going to find ourselves in that moment of truth, and many times at many different moments of our lives and to varying degrees in our lives. And in that moment of truth, in your moment of truth, you're going to discover two things, two incredibly important things that I long for you to discover. In your moment of truth, when you're tempted to temporarily set aside what you value, what you temporarily, abandon what's important to get what's immediate, when that moment of truth comes for you, you're going to discover who you really are and whose you really are. In that moment of truth, in your moment of truth, you're going to discover who you really are, what you really value, what really is at the core of who you are. You're going to discover what your true convictions are, not just what you say they are. You're going to discover in your moment of truth who you really are and whose you really are. And every single one of us at different moments in our lives and to varying degrees, all of us will end up in that place. The place that Jesus ended up for his third and final temptation. Throughout this series, we've been looking at the book of Matthew, and Matthew is the moment, specifically Matthew 4, where Jesus experiences temptation, 3 specific personal temptations. And we said throughout this series that the temptations that Jesus experienced actually represent the categories of temptation that all of our personal temptations fit under. That this is all of temptation rolled up into 3. And the first temptation that Jesus experienced was to meet a legitimate need, like he was hungry, right? He'd been wandering in the desert for 40 days. He hadn't eaten. He was tired. He was starving. And he had a legitimate need of hunger, and he was tempted to meet that legitimate need in an illegitimate way. And the second temptation that Jesus faced was to manipulate God rather than to cooperate with God. He was tempted to force God's hand. He was tempted to presume or assume that God was going to do something on his behalf. Now, this third specific and final temptation is the temptation to compromise or to sacrifice what's important for what's immediate. It's the temptation that we all experience to do or get the right thing, but get it in the wrong way at the wrong time. It's the temptation to temporarily set aside what I value, my convictions, my conscience, my faith. I've got to temporarily set that aside in order to accomplish what it is I need to accomplish, to get what it is that I've set out to get in my life. All of us have experienced that, and Jesus is about to too, and it's found in the book of Matthew, chapter 4, verse 8. It says, next, meaning after Jesus found his way out of the first 2 temptations, it says, next the devil took him to the peak of a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. So there's this moment. Last week we saw that Jesus stood on the top of the temple and saw all of, the temple and the courtyard. Now he's taken to an even higher place, to the top of a mountain, and he sees what the scriptures tell us is the kingdoms of the world. Now, a lot of, theologians believe that this was a mountain where he looked down and saw Jerusalem, and Jerusalem actually represented the kingdoms of the world in all their glory because it was the center of the known world at the time. And so Jesus, maybe he was looking at that. We're not exactly sure how this went down. Maybe it was like a Google Earth type thing, and he was kind of taken back and could see the whole world. I'm not exactly sure what it looked like, but I know what it sounded like because of what is said next. So Jesus is looking at the kingdoms of the world and all their splendor, and Satan says to him, I will give it all to you, meaning all the kingdoms of the world and all their glory. He said, I will give it all to you if you will kneel down and worship me. So here's Satan in this moment. He says to Jesus, look, if you will just bow down, okay, and this is important, if you will submit to my authority, this is so important. If you will just submit to my authority, I'll give you more authority. Jesus, if you will submit to my authority, just for a moment, not forever, if you will just temporarily, not forever, but if you'll just bow down for just a moment, nobody's looking, Jesus, nobody's going to see this. If you'll just step away from your convictions, if you'll just turn a blind eye to your conscience and what you believe is right, if you'll just let that go, if you'll just walk away from it or just set it aside for just a moment, if you'll just temporarily submit to my authority, I'll give you more authority. Now, why is this even a temptation? And see, this is so important. This is the very reason for which Jesus came. See, here's a little theological sidebar, okay? As you look into the beginning, the book of Genesis, right? God created Adam and Eve, and he placed them in the garden. He put parameters around them. And he said, all the authority of all that I've created. So God created everything. He established everything. He said, all authority over the earth and everything on it, I'm giving to you. God said, I created it all, but all the authority I'm giving to you. There's all the animals. Go name them. And Adam and Eve were like, that's a lot of animals. God, can't you name them? And God said, no, they're under your authority. You name them. So God had given and created everything, but gave all authority to man. But then man, Adam and Eve, chose to sin. They chose to step away from everything that God had established, the parameters that he had put in place. They chose to do things their own way. And they chose to ignore God's way, God's design, God's desire. They did their own thing. They sinned. And when they sinned, when they went their own way, what went with them? all of the authority that they had. So in this moment, Satan says to Jesus, he says, look, the kingdoms of the world and all their glory, all the authority of those things, I will give to you. And it's not Jesus in this moment didn't go, what are you talking about? You can't give me that. That's not yours to give. Jesus never disputed the validity of what the offer Satan was giving him in this moment. He never disputed it. Because as you read through the Old and New Testament, you see this theme that this is actually one of the reasons that Jesus came. That God sent Jesus into the world to reclaim authority over the earth and everything on it. This is something that Jesus desperately wanted. This is a reason why he came. And that's why when you read at the end of the book of Matthew, we're in the beginning of the book of Matthew, but at the end, when Jesus commissions the church, when Jesus gives the Great Commission and launches the church into all the world, what's the first thing he says? Now, if you're a Bible person, you're going to get this. If you're not, that's okay. Hang with me. But this is really important because it puts so much into context right here. Jesus in the Great Commissions, before he gets into everything, he says what? In Matthew 28, verse 18, he says, all authority. He says, all authority over heaven and earth has been given to me. In other words, Jesus says, look, I accomplished the very thing that God put me in this world to do. I came and reclaimed by my death and resurrection. I reclaimed authority that man had lost in the garden. I've taken that back. This was an incredible statement that Jesus made. This is what he wanted. This is why he came. And he did accomplish it in the end in the right way at the right time. But in this moment in Matthew chapter 4, he's tempted to do it sooner than he was supposed to. He's tempted to do it in a way he wasn't intended to do it. He's tempted to get what he wants in a way that he's not supposed to get it. And Satan says, look, you can have it all now. I know this is why you came, Jesus. You came to reclaim what Adam and Eve lost in the garden. And look, I'm willing to give it to you. But all you got to do is just temporarily step away from what you know is right. Just temporarily step away from your convictions. Come on, Jesus. You can have it now. No cross, no humiliation, no shame, no pain, no death, no breaking your mother's heart. You can be king of the hill right now. You can have it now. You can bypass all that's coming down the road for you. I'll give it to you now if you'll just submit to my authority for just a moment. I'll give you more authority. This was a real temptation. This is what Jesus wanted. This is why he came. And you're going to experience that temptation too. You're going to be so locked and loaded on the thing that you want, the thing that you believe you were created for. You're going to feel like, this is why I'm here on this earth for. This is the next logical thing, whatever it is for you. Whether it's building something, getting something, owning something, creating something, whatever it is for you. You're going to be tempted in that moment to temporarily step aside from what you know is right, from what you value. You're just going to have to turn a blind eye to the values you were raised with or the values that you want to instill in your kids. You're just going to have to turn a blind eye to your convictions, and you're going to have to tune out your conscience. If you would call yourself a Christian, you're going to have to, even to accomplish what you believe God has created you for, you're going to have to turn away from the voice of God in order to take that next logical step. You're going to be tempted to do and get the right thing, but do it in the wrong way at the wrong time. And see, the issue in that moment it's not whether it's right or wrong. It's not an issue of, is that a sin to do that? Is it a sin to close that deal? Is it a sin to start that business? That's not the issue. The issue, it becomes an issue of your peace. It becomes about whether or not you can go to bed at night and lay in bed and stare at that dark ceiling, knowing in your heart that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to do, the way that you're supposed to do it. And you see in that moment that the trick or the temptation, the lie is to think it's just about the moment. It's just about now. It's not a big deal. It's just about him. It's just about her. It's just one signature. It's not really putting everything on the form. It's just about this. It's just about that. It's not this. It's not that. But in the end, it really does come down to the question of, can God be trusted? Does God know? Does God care? Can God be trusted? And that's why at the beginning of this series, when we started talking about temptation, we said that every temptation is a test of your faith, not just your self-control. That every temptation you experience ultimately comes down to whether or not God can be trusted. It's not just an issue of your self-control. And so when your moment of truth comes, when you're tempted to turn away from and turn a blind eye to what you know is right, and what you believe, and your conscience, and your convictions, and what you value, and what really matters to you. When you're tempted to compromise what's important for what's immediate, in that moment, you're going to discover who you are, and you're going to discover whose you are. And this is the exact place that Satan brought Jesus to. And in this moment, Jesus didn't just walk away from him. Jesus actually did what Jesus has done through every other temptation he's found his way out of up until this point. Jesus, and that's actually a lesson for another day, what Jesus actually did. But rather than just kind of saying, get out of here, Satan, Jesus reaches back into the pages of history to a time where his people, where the nation of Israel were tempted in a very similar way. That back after they had been, delivered out of Egypt, and as they were heading to the promised land, they were on the verge. They were at the gates of the promised land where God had brought them to, the land that God was taking them to. And God knew, and Moses knew, that look, once we get in there, we're going to fall into the trap. We're going to fall into the temptation to do things our own way. We're going to fall into the temptation of the trap to take matters or to take things into our own hands. God knew that they're going to be so, committed, and they're going to prioritize building buildings and building cities and building homes and accumulating wealth. And Moses knew, hey, once we get in there, we're going to become so focused on trying to prove to the world that we're not a slave nation anymore. We're going to be so consumed with becoming autonomous that we're going to forget who got us here in the first place. That all along the way, God has shown that he is faithful. But once we get into that promised land, once things start going well for us, we're going to forget that God got us here. And so before they enter into the promised land, Moses delivers this compelling speech, and it's found in the book of Deuteronomy. We looked at the book of Deuteronomy last week, and Deuteronomy is essentially the speech that Moses gives to the people before they enter into the promised land, and he's pleading with them, look, before we open the gates and get in there, before we start building cities and homes, before we start, having everything that we want and everything that we need, and before we start taking matters into our own hands, let's remember how we got here. Let's remember what God has done, what God has shown us about himself, what God has done through us and in us as he's led us to this place. Before we become great in the eyes of the world, before God makes us a great nation, let's remember that he's the one that got us here in the first place. And so Moses gives them this speech, and here's what he says. He says, the Lord your God will soon bring you into the land he swore to give you when he made a vow to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In other words, this has been a long time coming. It's a land with large, prosperous cities that you did not build. The houses will be richly stocked with goods that you did not produce. You will draw water from cisterns you did not dig, and you will eat from vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you have eaten your fill in this land, be careful not to forget the Lord, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. Moses says to the people, look, when things get great, when we have more than we ever imagined we would ever have, when we're tempted to get more and go accomplish more and continue to accumulate and stock and have and conquer the world, let's not forget how we got here. Let's remember that we were once captives, that we were once slaves, that we were once in bondage, and we never had the options to ever have more. And now that we have more than we ever imagined we'd have, let's not forget who got us to this place. Let's never forget that it's the Lord that brought us here. And where this lands for us is so many times when we come to places and moments of temptation, we forgot how we actually got there, right? How is this even able to be a temptation in my life? We forget that, who is it that gave you your gifts and talents? Who is it that gave you your mind or allowed you to have the capacity to get the degrees that you have? Who allowed you to get noticed? Who gave you your capacity for more? Like who put that in you? And if you're like me, you'd say, well, God did. And God was saying to the people there through Moses, and I believe he's saying to us today, then don't forget, right? Like if God got you here, God would say, if I got you here, then why would you abandon me now? If I've brought you to this place where you even have the opportunity to be tempted by accumulating more, if you even have the ability to be tempted to progress and to build and to achieve and to accomplish, if you've even gotten to that place, don't forget who got you there and don't abandon me now. And so Moses is speaking to the people and he's reminding them, he's challenging them, he's just begging them never to forget. And so he says, because God has gotten us here, he says, you must fear the Lord your God and serve him only. Like fear the Lord your God, understand, acknowledge, recognize who God is, and as a result, do the logical thing. Surrender to him, serve him only. You're not here to serve yourself, serve him only. And so here's Jesus standing on the top of this mountain with Satan, looking down at the kingdoms of the world in all their glory. It's the reason he came. It's something he desperately wants. And Satan says, I'll give it to you now. But all you got to do is just temporarily abandon what you value. Give up what's important for what's immediate. You can have it right now. And so Jesus, rather than just, turning away or bowing down and giving in, Jesus reaches back to that moment in history, and he brings that verse from Moses' speech right into his present. He puts his own twist on it. And here's what he says. "Get out of here, Satan," Jesus told him, "for the scriptures say you must worship the Lord your God and serve only him." And see, do you know what Jesus wanted more than the kingdoms of the world and all their glory? I mean, he wanted that. That's part of the reason he came. Do you know what Jesus wanted more than the authority over the kingdoms of the world and all their glory? He wanted unbroken relationship with his Father. And do you know what he got in the end? Both. And do you know what you get? Do you know what I get when we want the kingdoms of the world and all their glory and we're willing to sacrifice our relationship with God in order to get it? Do you know what we get in the end? Neither. But in the moment, it's like, but I don't know. I don't see any other way. I don't know how else I'm going to accomplish this. This is just the way deals are done. This is just the way the world works. And if I don't, he won't. If I don't, she won't. If I don't, it won't. So I will, so it will. And we're so tempted and we're so willing because we're so driven. We're just willing to lay down and give up whatever it is that we really value and whatever it is that's really important to us. We're willing to give up our morality and our ethics and our convictions. We're willing to ignore our conscience. We're willing to ignore the Holy Spirit of God that's speaking to us. We're willing to turn away from all of that in order to get what it is we want. Because we're not really sure that God can be trusted or that God will come through or that we'll experience what it is that we want to experience in our lives. So what is it for you? I mean, what is that for you? Who is that for you? What is it for you that you want so badly, or who is it that you want so badly that you're willing to trade what you value in order to get it? You're willing to trade what matters most to you in order to get it and fool yourself into thinking that when I get on the other side, I'll just pick it up again. What is that for you? Who is that for you? We all experience that. I know I have. Over the last number of weeks, I've sat in this very chair struggling with this exact temptation. I've sat here wrestling with this myself. And over the last 8 years, I've been so thankful to be a part of this church. I love the Bridge. Over the last 8 years, I've been in various capacities in the church. I started out as attending and volunteering, and then I became on staff and have worn a number of different hats as I've been on staff. But one of the things I love so much about our church is being a part of the community, and I love our mission and vision that drives us, that everything we do is done through the lens of why we do what we do, that our desire is to build irresistible bridges between unchurched people and Jesus. And I love that. I love that we're constantly looking at ways in which we can reach people that don't know Jesus the way that many of us do yet. And we're willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And over the last number of months, I believe that we had this incredible opportunity at Christmas to reach people in the name of Jesus. And one of the ways I thought we could do that was building this drive-through Bethlehem experience that we've been talking about for the last number of weeks. And we've been planning it. We've been preparing for it. We've been, a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes. And I've been excited about it, really believing that we had this unprecedented opportunity this year to do something in a way that we've never done it before. And that it would actually accomplish the very thing we're here to do. I mean, this made perfect sense. I mean, we're here to build irresistible bridges. We have the opportunity to do that. This is going to be amazing. I could see hundreds of cars driving onto our campus, seeing the Christmas story lived out, in real ways with real people and real animals. It was going to be amazing. I could see it. But the closer we got to the event, the less peace I had, which made absolutely no sense to me. I mean, this seems like a great idea. It seems to make sense. I mean, it's going to do the very thing that we're here to do. Why wouldn't we do it? It makes perfect sense. People were excited about it. People were volunteering. Many of you gave. I mean, we believed. But the closer we got to the event, the less peace I had. And the more frustrated I became. And so I was praying, God, what's wrong? What's the matter? Is it me? What's going on here? And why don't I have any peace? And God, won't you give me peace? And the more I prayed for peace, the less peace I got. I had sleepless nights where I just couldn't sleep, and I was wrestling with this, struggling with this, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to be king of the hill. I wanted to, take on hell with a squirt gun. I wanted to, go out there and do what we're here to do. I'm so, driven by what it is we're trying to do and how we're trying to reach our community. That's like, let's go. This is a great idea. Why not do it? But I had no peace, and I couldn't explain why. And so I talked to our staff. First, I talked to my wife. Then I talked to our staff. We talked to the advisory team and just said, here's where we are, and here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm sensing. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel? And we began to pray about it. And I just said, look, we need peace. But in the end, there was no peace. And it wasn't an issue of whether or not it wasn't a great idea. It wasn't an issue of whether or not it was a sin or whether or not it was right or wrong. But I don't ever want to fall into the trap. I don't want to ever give in to the temptation of doing or building something for God without the peace of God. And so because there was no peace, the decision was made. It was obvious, because I'm not willing, and we're not willing, to compromise the peace of God, what matters most to us, for an opportunity we have to do what we think God has called us to do. What's most important is having peace, knowing that we're in right relationship with God. That's what mattered most to Jesus. It wasn't whether or not he could get what he came to get that way. It was that he wanted to be in right relationship with God, and he wasn't going to step away from what he valued most in order to get what mattered most. He valued his relationship with his Heavenly Father. So again, let me ask you, what is it for you? Or who is it for you that you want so badly that you're willing to trade what you really value and who you are in order to get it? Because in the end, you'll never know the peace of God. And you'll never find peace in the thing that you're going after. You just never will. So what is it for you? Who is it for you? Jesus desperately wanted the kingdoms of the world. He wanted the authority. He wanted to reclaim that. And he ended up doing it. But his temptation was to do it in the wrong way at the wrong time. I've experienced that temptation. And my guess is you have too. Maybe you are right now. That there's something or someone that you want so badly that you're willing to do whatever it takes in order to see it happen in your life. What is that for you? If you would stop for just a moment, in that moment of truth where you're tempted to do whatever it takes, whatever that is for you, if you would just stop for a moment and realize that in that moment of temptation, you're going to discover who you really are. And it's about whose you really are. And I believe if you can think about that, even for just a moment, it will help you see and find your way out. Now, ultimately, Jesus wanted to be king of the hill, but what he wanted more than anything was to be in right relationship with the King of Kings. And because Jesus did the right thing in the right way at the right time, it breathes meaning and purpose into everything that came after it. It breathes meaning and purpose into your life and mine. That Jesus Christ willingly gave himself. He didn't, take the easy way out. He didn't forfeit what he knew was right in order to get what he wanted. And because he did it the right way at the right time, he got everything back and then affords us the ability in our moment of temptation. It breaks the shackles of temptation. It breaks the authority that sin has over our lives. And it's all because of what Jesus did in the greatest sacrifice that's ever been made. That Jesus Christ willingly came into this world, yes, to reclaim authority, but he came in this world to give his life for you and to give it for me. How many kings would do that? I mean, how many kings would do that? How many kings would lay down their throne, and how many kings would lay down their life? There's only been one that would ever do that and has ever done that for you and ever done that for me, and his name is Jesus. And because of all that he has done and the way in which he did it, it breathes meaning and purpose into each and every moment of each one of our lives. And that's what we want to do today. We want to recognize and remember what Jesus has done. Chris mentioned earlier in the service that we're going to share in communion, so my hope is that you have some of these emblems with you right now. And these are representative of Jesus' body and blood. And I want to invite you as a family, or maybe you're home alone right now, but I want you to take that piece of bread and I want you to hold it in your hands. This piece of bread represents the body of Jesus Christ. That later on in the Gospels you read that Jesus, after he experienced his moments with temptation, Jesus' ministry then began, and it ended with him being at a table with his closest friends. And he was telling them all kinds of things about what was going to happen to him and what was going to be the result of it, and they didn't understand. But in this meal, Jesus took a piece of bread and he broke it. And he said that this bread represents my body, Jesus said, that would be broken for you. Jesus could have bypassed that. He could have got away from that. He could have got what he came to get in a different way, but he didn't. Because what mattered most to him was his relationship with his Heavenly Father, and he knew that if he did it the wrong way, it wouldn't be what it needs to be for you today. You were on his mind and you were on his heart. No matter how many temptations you've fallen into, no matter what it is you struggle with, Jesus knew that in advance, and he willingly allowed his body to be broken for you. And he said, as often as you take of this bread, do it in remembrance of me. And so I'm going to invite you right now, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you've been to, whatever you've been through in your life, whatever temptation you've fallen into, as many times as you've fallen into it. Jesus knew that in advance and willingly allowed his body to be broken for you, knowing everything in advance. So I'm going to invite you right now to take that piece of bread, and I want you to take it and eat it in remembrance and acknowledgement of his great, amazing, mysterious love for you. Take it and eat it. And at that same table, he raised a cup. He was still talking in ways they didn't understand and they were confused, but Jesus was speaking so profoundly and prophetically, and he said that this cup represents my blood, which represents a new covenant between God and man. And he said, this represents my blood that's going to be poured out for the forgiveness of sin, for the forgiveness of your sin, for the forgiveness of all the times that you've fallen, the temptations that you've given into, the times where you've turned your back on your own convictions, your own beliefs, your own values, all those times where you've willingly done what you know you shouldn't. Jesus knew all of that in advance, and he willingly went to the cross and allowed his blood to be poured out for the forgiveness, not just of the sins of the world, but for your sins and for my sins. And he said, as often as you take of this cup, do so in remembrance of me. So I'm going to invite you to take it and drink and remember him. Thank you, Lord. The band is going to close with a beautiful song. It's called How Many Kings? How many kings? How many kings would do what Jesus has done for you? How many kings would do what Jesus has done for me? There's only one. And his name is Jesus. And he came into this world on purpose, for purpose. He came into this world to be a living sacrifice for you. And so as this song plays, I want you to just sit in the safety and in the quietness of your home, wherever you are. And I want you just to listen to these words, to close your eyes and just listen to the beauty of these words and remind yourself that no matter how many times you've fallen, Jesus knew all of that in advance. And he didn't take a shortcut, and he didn't take the easy way out. He did the right thing, the right way, at the right time, because he knew that if he had to do it that way in order to be what he needed to be for you and for me. So let's not only enjoy the beauty of this song, but let's use this moment to just reflect and thank God for who he is, all that he is, and all that he's done for you.
Follow a star to the place unexpected. Would you believe after all we projected a child in a manger? Lowly and small, the weakest of all, unlikeliest hero, wrapped in his mother's child, just a child. Is this who we waited for? How many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have abandoned their homes? How many greats have become the least for me? And how many gods have poured out their hearts, romance a world that is torn all apart. How many fathers gave up their sons for me? Bringing out gifts for a newborn Savior, all that we have with a cost to your meek, because we believe. Gold for his honor and frankincense for his pleasure, and myrrh for the cross he'll suffer. Do you believe? Is this who we've waited for? How many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have abandoned their homes? How many greats have become the least for me? And how many gods have poured out their hearts to romance a world that is torn all apart? How many fathers gave up their sons for me? Only one did that for me. All for me. All for me. All for me. All for you. All for me. All for you. How many kings stepped down from their thrones? How many lords have abandoned their homes? How many greats have become the least? And how many gods have poured out their heart to romance a world that is torn all apart? How many fathers gave up their sons for me? Only one did that for me. Oh, all for me. All for you.
What a great service. This has certainly been a challenging series. Again, if you missed any part of the series, be sure to go to our website and click the On Demand button.
That's right. And be sure to be back here next week as we kick off our Christmas series. Until then, God bless and have an amazing week.
See you next week.